Good evening from Washington. Dan Rather with the CBS Evening News reporting tonight from Capitol Hill. Two headline stories from here again tonight. In private, the U.S. Secretary of State and the Soviet Foreign Minister reportedly make progress in nailing down a superpower arms control deal. In public, the Senate tries to nail down exactly where and for what Supreme Court nominee Robert Bork stands. First, about the Bork hearings on the Hill. Questions today centered on accusations that Bork is a rigid, inflexible, and radical ideologue, especially concerning women and blacks. Phil Jones begins our Capitol Hill coverage.
Bork was on the defensive today on issues ranging from his role in the Watergate affair to his personal religious beliefs, denying that he is an agnostic. But Judge Bork's biggest problem came when he argued with one of the few undecided senators that sex in some cases must be treated differently than race under the Constitution.
It's possible to say, for example, that there shall be no segregated toilet facilities anywhere as to race. I don't think anybody wants to say that as to gender. They're just differences that have to be accommodated.
But isn't that a bogus argument? We're not talking about unisex toilets here. We're talking about fundamental rights that women for too long have not been provided. It seems to me that there's a question as to how you treat the sexual segregation, and that's a trouble to me.
In the gender cases that I have decided as a Court of Appeals judge, I have decided more of them in favor of the female claim than I have the other way.
Bork was criticized today for following President Nixon's order to fire the Watergate special prosecutor in 1973 after then Attorney General Elliot Richardson refused. But Bork, then Solicitor General, did fire the special prosecutor and claimed today that he was always committed to the investigations.
I understood from the beginning that my moral and professional life were on the line if something happened to those investigations and prosecutions.
For 2 days, Bork has tried to distance himself from his public criticisms of Supreme Court decisions defending personal liberties. Bork claims he agrees with the decisions, differing only with the court's logic. Example, his criticism of the court's striking down an Oklahoma law allowing sterilization of prisoners.
I really wouldn't buy the way the Supreme Court there went about it. But I think it is clear, and people who've looked at it more than I have say it's clear, that that statute had racial animus in it. And it struck at, in effect, crimes that at that time were more likely to be committed by poor blacks than by middle-class white-collar whites. And on that ground, the statute would be unconstitutional.
Bork suggested today that as he grows older, he has changed many of his earlier views that opponents have called radical.
Yeah, I think the 64 Act really did an enormous amount to bring the country together and bring blacks into the mainstream, and I think that's the way I should have judged the statute in the first place.
But some members expressed skepticism.
And now we find some additional changes of position when he's up for confirmation to be a justice of the Supreme Court. I think as a consequence, you have to ask, is this a matter of expediency? Is this a matter of, doesn't it affect his credibility? Or is it a matter of just taking a position for the purpose of trying to assure his confirmation?
The committee had planned on finishing Bork today, but many members have more questions, so he will be back tomorrow. Dan?
Phil, it's been 2 intensive days. Is Bork going to make it?
He still doesn't have enough committed votes in the committee to win. His future depends on the 3 or 4 members who say they are still undecided. One of those undecided, Howell Heflin, a Democrat, said tonight that he thought that Bork had been a much more articulate witness today, but that he still had more questions. And Republican Arlen Specter, another uncommitted, said we're at midstream. So Bork still has a lot of selling to do.
Phil Jones. Phil, I know that you've noticed way beyond Capitol Hill, the Bork nomination is generating a kind of Bork barrel politics of rhetoric, right and left. Richard Schlesinger looks tonight at how groups nationwide are using Bork to raise awareness, raise cane, and raise cash.
They're starting up the presses, sending out the letters, and burning up the phone lines. Almost every political organization in America wants a piece of the Bork battle.
There is no tomorrow as far as the liberals and the conservatives are concerned on this issue, and everybody's going to throw every resource they have into the battle.
Whether he's seen as a hero or a scoundrel, Bork is one of the best motivators for political action this country has seen for years. Both sides agree that Bork could change America for generations. The right wing sees his nomination as a way to secure a Reagan legacy. The left wing sees his nomination as an assault on abortion and civil rights. But both sides see a common opportunity in the Bork nomination to raise some money and win some new supporters.
I think this is getting people up and alarmed and active. So in that way, it's very, very good for building a social movement.
You know, obviously they're using this to raise money on the right and the left. And we have told all the people that we work with, if you're going to ask for money, that's, you know, that's fine, that's your business. But you better ask for action also.
Both sides are using the same familiar tactics. Old phone numbers are being dialed with new urgency, using the promise or the threat of Bork to convince people to open their wallets.
But the National Abortion Rights Action League has announced an all-out frontal assault on our pro-life nominee, Judge Bork.
We're going to keep abortion safe and legal in New York by doubling our membership base and doubling our political clout.
Coalitions are being forged right and left as both sides, claiming broad grassroots support, aim for a crescendo of activity now that the Senate has finally begun to consider the Bork nomination.
We want to jam the line. We want everybody making phone calls into those offices. We want actually tons of letters.
Depending on who you talk to, there are between 10 and 30 senators who are undecided on the Bork issue. They're the targets for all the activity, and they're the ones who are getting all the mail.
Those 30, 35 senators are going to receive more attention perhaps than they have any other time in their life.
So which side is winning? So far, one of the only clear winners is Dave Zuckerberg. He runs an envelope company.
The more you get from one group, you're going to get a counterbalance from the other group. And naturally, it does a world of good in the envelope manufacturing business.
Zuckerberg won't say how much he's making, but he predicts his big machines will keep turning out envelopes until the Senate decides whether to confirm Robert Bork. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, Washington.
Besides the judge himself, the Bork hearings have spotlighted Senate Judiciary Chairman Joe Biden, a Democrat who wants to be president. Today, Biden is on the receiving end of questions. Questions about whether some of his most effective campaign speeches may have been taken out of the mouths of others without credit and without letting the public know. CBS News National Affairs correspondent Leslie Stahl is here now with a look at Biden's borrowing and the question of plagiarism. Leslie, exactly what is this all about?
Well, it's about whether, when you hear Joseph Biden speaking, you are hearing an echo of the past. In many cases, you are. All day long, his campaign has been wrestling with charges of plagiarism, going back to his days in law school and now again in the campaign. One accusation that the senator has taken the words of candidates before him as his own.
It cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
The gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
It doesn't measure the beauty of our poetry, the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, the integrity of our public official.
It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials.
Come to order. Senator Biden has been necessarily detained for a few moments.
The controversy made the senator late for the Bork hearings this afternoon, but his campaign calls the charges of plagiarism frivolous, including Biden's comments in a recent campaign debate that were borrowed liberally from British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock's campaign ad without attribution.
Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Why is Glenys the first woman in her family?
And I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
There are other examples of Biden lifting well-turned or moving phrases out of earlier speeches.
Those who are in the dawn of life are children. Second, those who are in the shadows of life are elderly, are sick, are needy, are handicapped.
and those third in the twilight of life are elderly.
A nation noble enough to treat those at the dawn of life with love, those in the dusk of life with care, and those who live in the shadow of life with compassion.
We have learned where the senator was when he was out of the Bork hearing room today. He was on the phone asking his old law school, Syracuse University, for a copy of his file. A member of his staff confirmed that when he was in law school, he was brought up on charges of plagiarism, but was exonerated. Dan?
He was exonerated. Leslie, this does not sound, at least at first blush, like any bombshell.
The law school, well, he was exonerated. The ruling was in his favor, but his campaign staff says that the senator will have a press conference tomorrow to answer all the charges. I'm sure the campaign does not want a question of credibility about this candidate to get too out of hand. They want to put the fire out as soon as possible.
Leslie Stahl. Still ahead tonight on the CBS Evening News. American bishops get some tough talk from the top. Mock war in Europe, but if this were the real thing, could the West win without nuclear weapons? David Martin is in Germany, and Terry Drinkwater is in California for the story of a national symbol, learning to be free.
Del Monte asked 3 people with a taste for something exciting, which drink has the blend of flavors they've been looking for.
Del Monte, apple cherry.
Del Monte, classic raspberry.
Del Monte, country strawberry.
Del Monte fruit blends. People with a taste for excitement are discovering that a drink with a blend of fruits can mean more taste. Fruit blends. More fruit, more taste.
I switched to Fleshmans after Ed's last checkup.
Heart disease. My cholesterol test said it was a real possibility. So Doc suggested a sensible diet.
Turns out a diet low in fat and cholesterol with foods like Fleshmans with no cholesterol can help lower Ed's cholesterol level. That's one way to help make his heart healthier.
Took the test again last week. I'm down 10 points.
Oh, and that does my heart good, too.
Fleshmans, part of a head start to a healthier heart.
I'm a wheel wanter. I'm a wheel wanter. It's a one now.
Step right up, America, for another winning world.
Take a test spin today
on Wheel of Fortune.
Weeknights at 6:30, following Channel 11 News.
That label stands for quality.
It stands for fashion, and it stands for America.
And that's why it matters. So ask for and buy Made in the USA.
Tell all the world America matters to you.
A Soviet shift of gears at the top today on prospects for an arms control deal. After lowballing chances for success in recent days, Soviet leader Gorbachev today talked up the idea of a done deal soon. Gorbachev's comment comes on the second day of talks here in Washington between Soviet Foreign Minister Shevardnadze and Secretary of State Schultz. Our usual man in Moscow, Wyatt Andrews, is covering the arms control negotiations here in Washington and joins us now to report the latest. Wyatt?
Dan, unlike yesterday, which was a day full of ceremony, today, Schultz and Shevardnadze worked virtually nonstop. But just like yesterday, both sides are reporting progress, now in 2 areas, both nuclear and chemical weapons. Schultz and Shevardnadze began today's talks by meeting one-on-one for almost an hour and a half. They are closest to an agreement eliminating all medium and short-range missiles in Europe.
There are some points on which we have to sit down and work a little more. Our negotiators are there, they're working, and they have our categorical instructions that they should seek solutions.
Here's what a Soviet source says is the way the treaty gaps are being narrowed. Problem: the 72 West German Pershing missiles with American warheads that the U.S. says cannot be part of the treaty. The possible compromise: the Soviets say they will accept West German promises to dismantle the missiles if, in a separate document outside of the treaty, the U.S. agrees to take the warheads out of Europe. Problem: what to do about the 2,000 warheads removed from all the missiles covered under the medium-range treaty? One Soviet idea being discussed: store all the warheads in one spot, a place like Fort Knox, one source said. To the Soviets, that would assure the warheads would never again be weapons. In the talks today, which broke off only for lunch in an ornate hall at the Soviet embassy, the negotiators also discussed a total ban on chemical weapons. Soviet Foreign Ministry spokesman Gennady Gerasimov said the 2 sides could agree on more than cutting European missiles to 0.
We can have another 0 if you like.
We can. It's within reach. It's zero on chemical weapons, banning chemical weapons.
Shevardnadze is said to have told his aides at the Soviet embassy that he and Schultz are spending an unusual amount of time on ceremony. That's said to be good diplomacy, but Dan, that might mean that by the deadline tomorrow night when these talks end, they might not be finished all of the work.
Wyatt Andrews. And as Wyatt mentioned, eliminating 72 West German Pershing missiles is a key element of the arms control deal now in the works. Defense Department correspondent David Martin is in West Germany investigating the possible impact of a West Germany without Pershings in case of war.
Tanks and more tanks, the first line of defense against the Soviet invasion of Europe. This week, 35,000 American soldiers are taking part in an exercise called Certain Strike, rushing to the front to help the Germans defend their territory from a mock Soviet invasion. But the commander of the Allied forces says if this were a real war, he couldn't stop the Soviets without nuclear weapons.
We would reach a critical point on the battlefield within a matter of days in which the war would go nuclear.
This Pershing missile hiding in the German woods is one of those nuclear weapons. If there is an arms control agreement, the Pershings would be eliminated. But right now, they are still very much part of the battle plan, and visitors are not welcome.
CBS News, I don't think you're authorized in here.
Without the Pershings, these F-111 bombers in England would be the only American nuclear weapons based in Europe with the range to attack targets deep behind enemy lines. But these planes would be easier for the Soviets to shoot down than Pershing missiles. So without the Pershings, the ability to defend Europe with conventional weapons becomes more important.
In this exercise, the main attack has begun, and this German tank now has to fall back, which is probably what would happen in a real invasion of Europe.
The Americans move up to reinforce the German lines, but even with reinforcements, NATO will be badly outnumbered.
You get into the tanks, I think the ratio is about between 3 and 4 to 1, something like that. You get into helicopters, about 2 to 1.
The U.S. hopes to make up what it lacks in numbers with high-tech weapons like the Apache helicopter, which would hide behind ridge lines and pop up to fire missiles at Soviet tanks.
I just don't think they can match guns with us right now.
Regardless of how many soldiers and high-tech weapons are rushed to Europe, the Allies don't have the staying power to fight a drawn-out conventional battle here.
I mean, what the hell difference does it make if we have 27 NATO divisions there in the center region if they don't have enough ammunition to fight for more than 3 weeks?
The U.S. would still have thousands of short-range nuclear weapons here in Europe. But what worries the commander of NATO is that if the Pershings are taken out, that would be only the first step toward eliminating all nuclear weapons in Europe.
You've got to have some nuclear weapons now. Maybe sometime in the future not. But that isn't right now, and it isn't in the near future. We need the nuclear weapons here.
If the arms agreement goes through, the Soviets will give up roughly 3 times as many nuclear weapons as the U.S. That sounds like a good deal, but with NATO's armies badly outmanned, the U.S. needs nuclear weapons more than the Soviet Union. David Martin, CBS News on the North German plain.
One word distinguishes the American Express card from the others: member. And membership has its privileges.
Let's play we stayed an extra day. I'm glad we have the American Express card.
I seem to have lost my wallet with all my cards.
I can have a new card for you by tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
She's so lovely.
She reminds me of you.
To apply by phone, call 1-800-THE-CARD.
Where does it hurt?
Here.
For indigestion, heartburn, and gas, nobody does as much as Mox Plus. Dose for dose, it neutralizes more than any regular strength antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as Mox Plus.
If every time you look around it seems like your rug is dirty, try Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner. Because it contains the ingredient Fiberpel, it keeps your heavy traffic areas cleaner longer than the other liquid spray. Trust new Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner.
When you get an allergy attack, you'll try any advice. Any advice.
Try the desert.
But the best advice is what doctors have said millions of times. Take Datap. Dimetap in non-prescription formulas brings proven relief. So take the advice of doctors and pharmacists for allergies
I see the desert worked.
and take Dimetap, the best advice you can take.
Pope John Paul tried to close the door on cafeteria-style Catholicism today. American bishops pressed him to please allow a freer exchange of ideas in the church. But the Pope, with love, told them that dissent cannot be given equal weight with the, quote, church's authentic teachings. Mark Phillips reports on this, the 7th day of the papal tour.
Showdown day on Pope John Paul's American tour. His meeting with 300 bishops, those caught between the rock of strict Vatican doctrine and the hard place of a U.S. congregation that defies much of church law. Americans have been trying to make their voices heard. The bishops today talked of a certain rebelliousness in their flock. The Pope may be listening, but he has not been agreeing. The moderate tone of his public speeches was replaced today by a lecture from the boss, a theology lesson delivered in private to the closed meeting of bishops. One by one, John Paul laid down the law on the contentious issues. Divorce forbidden. Families in trouble need help. Contraception, natural methods must be encouraged. Abortion disregards the sacred character of life. Women, the church gives them dignity, but not the priesthood. Dissent from these views remains what it is, he said, dissent. To think people could ignore church strictures and still be good Catholics is a grave error. The Pope's hard line won't make things any easier for the American Catholic clergy. John Paul has defined the church here not as the American Catholic Church, but as the Roman Catholic Church in America. After the meeting, the bishops summed up the task they're now faced with.
If the choice is between give them oatmeal so that they'll keep coming or give them meat and potatoes and some of them can't digest that, I have to give them meat and potatoes. I can't water down the church's teaching in order to keep people in it.
Later today, John Paul met First Lady Nancy Reagan at a meeting dedicated to fighting drug abuse among children. The Bishop of Rome, having asserted his authority to his priests, resumed bringing his uncompromising message to the public. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Celebrating the United States Constitution's 200th birthday one day early, President Reagan today led thousands of school children, federal workers, and tourists in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As part of the ceremony from the Capitol in Washington, which was seen by millions on television, some 100,000 red, white, and blue balloons fill the sky.
Zippity-doo-dah. Wow, look at this. Post Natural Raisin Brand now has zip-pack resealable packaging. Zips the freshness right in, so it's better than ever. Too bad there's no one to share it with, to taste how crispy these flakes stay, how these naturally sweet raisins stay plump and juicy. Too bad. Zippity-doo-dah. Zippity-yay! Post Natural Raisin Brand and Post Natural Brand Flakes, now with zip-pack freshness.
Used to be. For me, a pain reliever was a pain reliever. Until I ended up in the emergency room one day. The doctor there gave me Tylenol. It took care of the pain without irritating my stomach. And it really opened my eyes about medicine. Hospitals have so many choices for pain, but they choose Tylenol the most. Now for me, a pain reliever is Tylenol. That's what I trust.
Trust Tylenol, the pain reliever hospitals use most.
The heat of the sun, searing, relentless. An ordinary window lets most of it right in. But Anderson's high-performance sun window turns hot sun into cool daylight. It actually reduces